We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Antry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And as I've been doing the past few weeks, just the global news update, so I can remember where the heck we were in case I'm listening to this back 2 or 3 weeks from now. So what do we have this week? There was, warnings of it. It thankfully didn't turn out nearly as bad as was,
as somebody who lives in Florida and has been asked to evacuate multiple times and then had it turn out to be nothing, the worst thing that can happen is that, I mean, that's not the worst thing, but one of the side effects of having a warning go unfulfilled is that people take it less and less seriously every single time.
Sure, yeah. Boy, so, who cried wolf
for those
syndrome,
of you that
right? Yeah.
are in the future and looking back, that there was a 8.9 earthquake off the coast of Russia.
Yes.
Like all the Pacific Northwest.
That's right.
Went in Hawaii, went into tsunami warnings, and people were freaking out, and Oprah closed her road and nobody was allowed on her land or whatever. I don't know what happened. I don't quite understand any of that, what happened there. Then it turned out not to be like the tsunami everybody expected. So,
well, yeah. I mean, good. Thankfully.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good. That part is good.
Yes.
But the next time the tsunami warning happens,
I don't know.
You should definitely take it seriously.
Yes, definitely take it seriously. So other Pacific Northwest news over on Vancouver Island near my neck of the woods. We've got a raging wildfire going on,
that is true.
Which is a little bit strange, honestly, just because the weather here has not been particularly hot, although it has been dry. So dry is worse than hot, honestly, when it comes to wildfire stuff. But bizarrely, like, this sounds like it's made up, and I'm not entirely sure. I didn't see all the details of how they actually determined that this is true, but apparently what sparked the wildfire on Vancouver Island was a bird dropped a fish on a power line.
An osprey dropped a fish.
Which is
as somebody who used to have an osprey like living in their tree out, in front of their house before we had to cut the tree down because it died. I don't think the osprey was related to that one.
I doubt it.
Fish carcasses are a common occurrence.
Yeah.
They would pick up like puffer fish and go, "Oh, I can eat this," and it would just end up somewhere.
Yep.
Just like a puffer fish in the middle of the road. You're like, "What are you doing out here, bro?" And he's like, "Man, I had the weirdest ride."
So we do have other wildfires going on the mainland, but out in the west coast here, ours are not as bad as on the east coast of Canada. We once again had reports of air quality, breathability in Canada and northern United States as being the worst in the world this past week from wildfire smoke. So that's been rough going. What else do we had? We had U.S. news, right? Firing of the Bureau of Labor Statistics chief because the job numbers were not favorable. Revised
because people don't understand how statistics work. Basically.
Yeah. And the whole
the statistical illiteracy in the world in general, but the United States specifically is it's atrocious. It's a real problem.
Yes,
that people do not understand how statistics work because unlike normal mathematics, statistics doesn't always follow what makes sense to people.
Sure.
And when that happens, they think, well, if it doesn't make sense to me, then it can't be true. That's literally how science works. A lot of things don't make sense, and that's why we have to figure them out. We don't understand how these bones got in the ground, but we know they're there. Let's try to figure it out.
Strangely enough, even if you replace the person who is heading the bureau, the next person, if they just go by the figures and don't make anything up, going to be similar figures. Because the figures are the figures.
They will continue to be modified as more data comes in, because that's how statistics works.
Yes, they will. So then we had a couple of nuclear submarines repositioned in some kind of weird, seems to be all on social media, back and forth between Russia and the United States. So
my ice maker's broken.
What's broken?
my ice maker.
Ice maker.
My
That
freezer
is
is
news.
broken. That is the big news.
It is the
Not
big
only is it
news.
broken, but it's still
Saved
broken.
for last. Yeah.
Yeah. They replaced it yesterday, and I had to call them again today and say, listen, it's still broken. It's still not making ice. It's trying. It's making the clicking sound.
It's making the noise.
It's making the noise. There's definitely ice in there. I can feel it, but it's not
just
coming
clogged.
out.
It's not out of water or something.
No, it's not out of the water.
Okay.
But making iced coffee a little difficult.
No kidding. Well,
these are the really troubling parts of these times, 2025.
Sure. That's the non-AV stuff out of the way, but it's the context for what's going on in the background while we talk about the things we're actually here to talk about on this here podcast.
So you're sitting here drinking my room temperature iced coffee. It's not iced coffee. It's cold brew, but whatever. So I didn't watch anything this week. My wife and I was extremely busy this weekend again.
Okay.
It's just like, for those of you that are wondering about updates on the house, things are moving forward. It is... I continue to forget what I have told you people when I haven't told you people. So right now we're trying to secure funding on a lower interest loan that is coming through the government, and because of it's called disaster relief. Mm-hmm. It's a disaster relief loan. It comes in at lower interest because you weren't exactly expecting to have to buy a new home right now.
I see. And so this would not be a mortgage.
It would not.
Okay.
But we're trying to secure this loan, and it's looking good. But it moves at the pace of government. So it's, a mortgage would be, usually you get pre-approved, and then you figure out how much money you have to spend, and you go find a house that's underneath that amount of money to spend. Yeah. With this, you have to find the house, get make an offer, have them accept it, and then go to them and say, how much money will you give me towards this? Little bass awkward, as they
Seems
say.
Seems a little backwards, yeah.
Yeah. But my wife is abs. I mean, I don't know how she does it. I'll be honest with you. I don't know how she does it. I remember when I used to sit at a desk and I would have time to juggle multiple things at the same time. But now that I'm always, at a shop, working on a bike, or essentially Ubering kids around or picking up things or whatever, I just can't. I haven't checked. I check my email on my phone as I'm driving, which is super
admit
stupid.
That, Tom. Don't admit that.
Well, I'm not actually moving.
When you're pulled over,
there's a light
safely
to get into my apartment complex that is so long.
Still.
It is so. You sit there at the stoplight for 10. I'm not exaggerating. 10 minutes is not uncommon to sit at the stoplight. Yeah. So everybody's got their phones out. Everybody's sitting there waiting for this
Maybe
light
that's
to
why
change.
it takes so long. It's finally time to go, and the person at the head of the line just sits there for another 45 seconds.
It's like almost a highway, basically. But it's, so during normal business hours, it's timed. And it just will not change for the longest time. Like during the evenings or in the early mornings or whatever, they have sensors, so it'll change. So you have to be a little more cognizant. But since you're turning left to get into the building, there's another left turn coming from the perpendicular direction. So you just wait till you start seeing those cars going in front of you. You're like, oh, okay, put my phone down. Time to be ready.
I'll bet there's enough time for more cars to make it through that light, but people were distracted.
This is Florida,
right?
They're quick on the horn and quicker on the trigger. So what did you watch, Rob?
Yes, I did watch a movie this week. I watched Black Bag, which I had been looking forward to. This is a Steven Soderbergh directed movie. We're starring Michael Fassbender and Cate Blanchett.
Sounds like a heist. Is it a heist movie?
No, it's spies. They are
okay.
Yeah, British spies, espionage type stuff going on. And so like many spy style movies, it's all about a mole hunt. We've definitely had mole hunt style narratives before. And I had heard a lot of good things about this movie. It's not overly long, just over an hour and a half long. I've got a lot of praise that I'm going to give it in a moment here for the photography and that. But I'll just say it outright from the very beginning. When I got to the end of this movie, my response was, "Oh, that's it."
Yeah.
I was waiting for at least one more twist at the end of the movie. I really thought there was at least one more twist coming, and it just didn't. And I was definitely feeling like what ended up being the resolution of the whole mystery and everything like that, I thought was like purposely underwhelming while I was watching it, because I was expecting one more big twist.
Right. You thought it was a red herring.
Yeah, so I got to the end and I'm like, oh, that was it, which left it underwhelming. Like, not that there wasn't a resolution, it was far too tidy, and it was far too the person just admitted what they had done, and I was like, that didn't feel particularly surprising or satisfying. I mean, I guess it's nice for the folks who are just like, yeah, I just want to have the ending explained to me and have the person admit it and tie it all up in a nice, easy bow, and off we go. That's the end of the movie. It just kind of surprised me that's all it was. So I can't say I was like over the moon thrilled about it, as far as, leaving a lasting impact or that. But go ahead, Tom.
So do you feel like when a movie like that happens, like, you almost are like, did they run out of money? And then
no. I mean, it felt like, I don't know if this was adapted from a novel. It certainly felt like something that was adapted from a novel. And if so, perhaps it was just straightforwardly so. But I was definitely expecting there to be some. Now the thing about this is we are dealing with a UK anti-espionage unit, and the way they're depicted in this movie, so we've also got other characters in here. Naomi Harris, who I thought was actually kind of a standout. She was a supporting character in this for sure, but I thought as an actor she was kind of a standout in this. Regé-Jean Page and Marissa Abella and Tom Burke fill out the rest of the cast. So this does play out kind of like a play. There are more settings and elaborate settings than would translate directly to a stage play version, but this is something that could be adapted to a stage play. I could definitely see that being the sort of thing. So it's a compact cast, keeping it within this. But since these are supposed to be spy, anti-espionage type of people, they are the worst spies I've seen. They have no control over their emotions, no control over their facial reactions. That part just absolutely did not ring true to me, that they were so emotional, so easily provoked. So the facial expressions are just plainly on everybody's face. Michael Fassbender is supposed to be like the most stoic, can detect anybody's lie. Nobody can get through his lie detection techniques. And yet, as soon as like one kind of tugging at the collar thing happens to him, he's like nakedly, obviously sweating in front of everybody, to the point that I was like, no, that doesn't work. it felt strange that nobody in here was in any way had a poker face. It doesn't make any sense for people who are supposed to be spies. But I guess it's all for the benefit of the audience. Everything was plastered right on everybody's face. So yeah, like I say, those are my criticisms of it. For compliments that I want to give to this movie, beautiful cinematography in this. Really, really high contrast images, and used to great symbolic effect, because every time, pretty much every scene has like a few very bright lights in there. Some of them in the foreground, or very obvious, like a wall sconce or something like that, where there's like a handful of very bright light sources in every scene, and they are just on the verge of slightly overexposed. Which is very, very intentional, because it's consistent throughout the whole movie. And it does give that symbolic feeling of, well, bringing things to light is harsh, and maybe we don't want to see all these things, and that's intentional. Yeah. And so that look of the movie played very well to the tone of everything. And then some of my favorite scenes were Michael Fassbender, as a habit for when he wants to think about things, he has this little river by his residence, and he goes out there on this tiny little fishing boat, and he just throws his lure out there and slowly reels in and does his fishing while he's sort of thinking things through. And they did a good job of paralleling some of his comments about fishing and that with the tracking down this mole. The idea of if you pull in too quickly, the line is going to break, and all of that is paralleled as the story is going on. Let the suspect run with the lure already in their mouth unbeknownst to them. It's later on that you hook them, and all of that worked as a good parallel in the storytelling between fishing and sorting all of this out. But yeah, like I say, just everything was far too painted on everybody's face for me to believe that this was in any way realistic to spycraft. It was such a contained little cast that it's like, well, either they're going to do the thing of it's some character we've never met before, or it's one of these 6 people. Like there's no other way around it.
What was the movie? There was like 3 characters in it, and one of them was Harrison Ford. It was like What Lies Beneath or something like that, or Under the Water. It was like somebody had killed somebody. There was like 3 characters in there. I'm like, it's got to be one of you.
Yes,
right?
That's right. So, obviously we've got good actors in this. Like I say, the cinematography was great. I enjoyed some of the symbolism, but just if you're watching it for the plot, for the mystery of it, and for it to play out, it's like that left me unsatisfied. But yeah, there we go. So mildly, I think. The thumb's very much in the middle on this one for me. I don't really want to go up or down on this. It's a very much thumbs in the middle for me for Black Bag. I was hoping for a bit more because some of the reviews I was seeing of it were really quite positive on it. But yeah, I was just let down by the plot.
I will say that my son saw Fantastic Four.
Okay.
He saw that without, he's 19 years old. He's not going to see it with me. It's my middle son. And when he came back, my wife and I both asked him about it, and he said, well, it was okay.
Okay.
I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. I was like compared to Superman. He was like, oh, Superman was way better.
Okay.
I'm like, really? And I said, that's not what I've heard. My wife said the same thing. And he said, yeah, all of my friends agreed that they thought Superman was better. He goes, I'd go see Superman again. I wouldn't go see Fantastic Four. Okay. He's very big on no spoilers.
Yep,
so
good.
He wouldn't tell me a single thing about them. I didn't ask, but he wouldn't tell me a single thing about the movie. So there you go. 19-year-old. That's his review.
I haven't seen it yet, so I don't want to hear any spoilers on it. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. I plan to see Fantastic Four at some point, but I just didn't get around to it this past week.
Yes. So I guess that's it. I don't know. We mostly watched sports this week and just talked through things. So
there you go.
I don't know.
It's not scripted narrative.
It's not. And we can stop and go, oh, look, and then she can tell me to rewind it. I will say that we watched the Tour. I watched the Tour de France, and I watched the Tour de France avec Femmes avec Swift, which is the female version of the Tour de France. First of all, man, those women are no joke.
No kidding.
Oh my god. Oh my god! You do the calculations for how fast they're going. You're like, oh my! Like, please, for the love of God, that is way too fast. But my wife loves Wout van Aert, who's a cyclist on the not Jumbo Visma. It's a Visma Lisa bike team now. And she's liked him since we watched the first season of Unchained, or whatever it's called on Netflix, where he left the tour that year because his wife was having a baby and he wanted to be there for it. My wife's like, that's exactly my kind of guy. I was like, okay. Plus he's cute. Anyway, so he won he finished first on the last day of the Tour de France, and my wife literally dropped everything to watch. I was like, oh my god, Wout's in front. And she was like, is he gonna win? I'm like, I don't know, come watch. She was very thrilled. So he didn't win the tour, he won the last day of the tour.
Okay.
Which was great because we've seen him get second, like, it feels like dozens of times at this point, and to see him finally win one stage was great. So that's if you haven't watched, sorry for the spoilers, if you haven't watched the Tour de France, it's very exciting for us. But for the rest of the world, I'll tell you that not the most exciting sport. Even the 30 minutes of extended highlights, it's mostly people just pedaling, and you're like this is boring. Like, who's watching this? I don't know. I am. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV question. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask us by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Come to the website. You can find our shows, our show notes, any links of products or articles we'll be referring to, as well as our Flickr album, a link to our Flickr album, so that you can follow along with the pictures that we'll be referencing. I'll try to describe them as best I can, but sometimes they are complicated. So, yeah, You're going to want to go see that Flickr album. You can find us on Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant, where you can see our live recording sessions as well as the Flickr albums as they go past.
Yeah.
At least the pictures, at least Rob will integrate those into that. You can contact us directly. Rob at avrant.com. His socials is at First Reflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. And I do check that email. So
okay.
I had to respond. Did I respond to you as well when I responded to somebody who was asking a question? I think I responded to both of us.
Recall that. I don't remember seeing any response from Tom.
Well, I did.
Okay.
And sometimes I respond to people
maybe
directly
not CC'd.
right away. Yeah. I thought I CC'd question at avrant.com, so it should have come to both of us, but
I don't recall.
Maybe it didn't.
I'm not saying it didn't happen. I just don't recall.
I'm not saying. I want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you do that is go to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, send us a PayPal donation. This week, we want to thank Bill and Steve for doing that. Thank you very much, Bill, and thank you, Steve.
Yeah, that's lovely to see. Bill and Steve, thank you both for your PayPal donations. Really appreciate that financial support.
If you want to support us monthly, you can go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast to become one of our patrons. We are currently at 126. It's a new month, so we lost 5.
Yeah.
Actually, I know for sure we gained 1 at some point,
right?
Because I got a notification about it. But we're down 5. We were at 131 last episode. We're at 126. So if you haven't updated your credit card information, now's the time.
Yeah, that seemed pretty obvious. I don't think we just drove that many people away, but you never know. Maybe we did. But that is patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thank you to our 126 patrons over there.
So Jason, if you can't support us financially, support us in some way, we'll mention you here. Jason alerted us that AVRant was no longer showing up in the YouTube Music app, so we updated our YouTube playlist and podcast settings, and hopefully that's fixed now. Also, I broke the website for about a half an hour. So that might have done that as well. In fact,
no, it wasn't that. That was purely on YouTube. They did a thing where, because they did that whole thing where if you are a podcast on YouTube, you could like assign a thing as like specifically as podcasts, like it could have that tag on it that it's specifically a podcast now, but that got tied into your playlists. And so before it used to be that like pretty much YouTube channels could just show up on the YouTube Music app by themselves, and you could subscribe to your YouTube channel there. But then it became where you had to be marked as either a music or podcast to show up in the YouTube Music app, and I hadn't done that. So updated a bunch of tags in the background and reorganized some playlists and that, so it's a little bit more usable. And it appears to be there now, so I think that's working. We'll actually have a link in the show notes if you want to check out the YouTube Music version of our podcast, if that's of interest to you. But thank you to Jason. Jason, thank you for that alert, because I never would have looked into it unless somebody had mentioned it. I have never even looked at the music app before.
The back end of WordPress says you're using an old version of something, update it. And I was like, I can't update it from here for some reason. Let me go into the hosting site or I don't know what it was. Anyways, I went into the site, I updated it, and the site immediately broke. I mean, immediately, not even a little bit. So I had to go into customer support, and they were like, yeah, your theme and plugins don't work with the new whatever. I'm like, so should I change them? And they said, no, don't
just roll back.
Just roll it back. Which they did for me, and then it was unbroken. Jack has a Dayton Omni mic that pretty much just sits around in this place now that he has replaced it with a measurement microphone from Cross Spectrum Labs. So awesome. So his Omni mic is up for grabs, and he's offered it to us to either take it off his hands or give it away to an AVRant listener. I think we should give it away. What do you think?
All right. Yeah, I have not responded back to Jack, but I want to thank Jack for the offer, and yeah, I'm happy to do that as a giveaway. If Jack wants to either like ship that directly, I don't know, coordinate addresses. I'm no good at giveaway stuff. I have no idea what to do.
So if you are interested in an Omni mic, or a mic, period, especially if you have DRAC, this will.
Yeah, this is a perfectly reasonable measurement microphone. It's a Dayton measurement microphone. That's what it is.
We are going to offer this up. Rob and I will talk, and then next week we will come. I'm making some promises that we may not keep. Next week we will have something. We'll have more news on this. So if you're interested, question at avrant.com. Send us a note to let us know that you're interested. This will not put you in a raffle or anything like that.
Okay.
We're not going to be asking for information.
I don't know. I wouldn't think that there'd be like hundreds of entrants for that sort of thing. So I think this is pretty much a write to us, question@avrant.com. Let us know that you'd like this Dayton Omni mic, and we'll figure it out from there.
We'll figure it out
It'll
from there.
probably be a first come, first serve type of thing.
Maybe it'll be first come. Maybe if we get enough, we'll just use a random number generator and we'll just grab it, because I would like to give that away.
Sure.
And then we'll get your address or whatever, and then we'll send it to Jack, and he can ship it to you rather than ship it to us, and then we have to ship it to you.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
silly. But yeah, if you're interested in the Dayton Omni mic, and this would be your chance. All right.
There you go.
Greg wasn't done loading all of his disc collection to his new Kaleidoscape via their disc to digital system just yet, so he sent over more movie codes our way. I think there was like 4 of them.
Sounds about right. Yeah, it was 4 or 5.
One of them I already had,
okay.
And one of them was expired. Now, we have found in the past that and it was the one out of the 4, it was the one I was super excited about.
Oh,
and it's obviously not. I'm not complaining in any way.
Right, yeah.
Please, Greg, do not feel like, because some of these things, sometimes they expire, sometimes they don't.
Definitely,
it's really weird.
Sometimes they don't.
I mean, I've seen some that have been like from the early 2000s that still work, and then like this one, it said it expired in 2022,
right?
And it was like, and it wasn't working.
Which,
and
I mean, kind of fair enough. It's not like there wasn't a warning.
It was Tenet. So maybe if I go further in the future, it'll start working again.
That's right. You gotta go backwards. You gotta work your way back. It's in your future when 2022 will come.
I just saw someone making fun of that movie on like a longer video. They were kind of describing the plot of it, and as I was listening to the plot, I was going, "Yeah, this movie's weird." like, why does it not make any sense? And also, what? So they were making fun of how you couldn't hear the dialogue over the music.
Yes. That is a Christopher Nolan special.
So I would like to see that movie again one of these days. So we also got some notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going from Jack, who's trying out 2 of our recommendations for swimming headphones. So far, the Shocks Open Swim Pro bone conduction headphones function well and sound okay, but you forgot how awkward it can be to actually obtain downloadable versions of the audiobooks and music audiobooks. Can you imagine swimming into somebody reading a book to you?
You got time.
Crazy. I mean, that's crazy. I'm not in any, Jack, I am not in any way insulting you. I'm just thinking about cycling and having somebody read into my ear, because like when I drive with audiobooks, I get distracted and I miss whole sections. So yeah, that's interesting. I never would have thought of that. Anyways, how awkward it can be to actually obtain a downloaded versions of the audiobooks and music tracks that he wants to listen to. He really does rely on streaming now, so he might have to go with Karl's more expensive Zygo Z2 suggestion. That's a proprietary wireless solution, might be worth the cost. Also, he's a member of the 2 Hour Plus Club.
That's right.
The original 2 Hour Plus Club. Leighton, Karl, Ben, Joe. Joe is looking forward to taking in the CEDIA Expo again this year. Perhaps he can give us a report like he did last year. Yes, Joe, that'd be great.
I think so.
Also, he listened to most of last week's AVRant episode while lying in a dentist chair. I am sorry about the length of your dental work. That's a root canal if I've ever heard of one. So thanks for the distraction, he says. Sasi says he got a laugh from the way we responded to his spreadsheet of 95 speakers ranked by their 1-watt sensitivities they sent in last week. Hopefully we'll be able to get to the question in his long list of this week that prompted the whole spreadsheet project. Preamble.
Yep.
Somebody's trying to foreshadow that. So we got notes of gratitude from Jack, Leighton, Karl, Ben, Joe, and Sasi. Thank you for thanking us.
Yeah, I'll say those names one more time. We got Jack, Leighton, Karl, Ben, Joe, and Sasi. Thank you all so much for the notes of encouragement and gratitude. We very much appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
In the news, the French company Reavon, whatever,
I've always said
has quietly
Reavon.
closed up shop. Doesn't matter how you pronounce the name, because they don't exist. And discontinued all of their high-priced Ultra HD Blu-ray players, citing a lack of specific components, leaving them with no plans for any replacement models or further updates. They're a French company, so can we blame tariffs for this? I don't think we can, right? We can't blame tariffs.
Part shortage is part shortage. I don't think that had to do with U.S. tariffs, that part.
Yeah.
No.
So when Oppo left the disc player market, Reavon jumped in as their heir apparent, but the writing has been on the wall for some time now, as early plans to add HDR10 Plus support for their players never materialized, and as new discs with new DRM keys were released, they were often unplayable until hacked updates that could only be loaded onto Reavon players via USB stick were posted on forums by knowledgeable users. Never a good sign.
No.
And now that they have completely left owners in an alert saying just to contact their dealers for any support requests, as they no longer operate any local support outlets and warranty claims are being ignored. So outside of Sony and Panasonic, that pretty much just leaves Magnetar as the lone Ultra HD Blu-ray player specialist. So yeah, I guess streaming is it now. We are no longer doing discs. That's crazy to think about.
I mean, Sony and Panasonic haven't exactly been refreshing their Ultra HD Blu-ray player lineups in any significant way. Those have been holding pat, and Magnetar is out there. They might end up being the last game in town, but if Reavon was having difficulty obtaining parts, I don't know if Magnetar is immune from that. You know, there are limited OEMs for some of these specific parts to do with optical disc drives. All of that is definitely winding down at this point. So, perhaps not the greatest writing on the wall when it comes to Ultra HD Blu-ray players.
All right. Epson has released the replacement for the Pro Cinema 6050 UB projector model. The new model is a Pro Cinema LS9000. It uses the same black chassis as the LS12000, and unsurprisingly, it uses a laser light engine instead of a replaceable lamp. Perhaps the most exciting thing is that Epson has managed to keep the MSRP the same at $4,000.
Yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised by this. I was like, hey, MSRP is the same? Was not expecting that.
Yeah. You get a lot of features for that price, so there were a couple of minor downgrades. Let's start with those. The light output is rated at 2200 lumens for both white and color. The 6050 UB was rated at 2600. But of course, that required running the 6050 UB in high lamp mode and with less than accurate white, point, and color reproduction. So in terms of real-world performance with an accurate calibration applied, the new LS9000 is not much dimmer at all. This is also the clearest difference between the LS9000, 12000, and QB1000 in Epson's Pro Cinema projector lineup, with their light output figures rated at 2200 lumens, 2700 lumens, and 3300 lumens respectively. Yeah. And all of them use a blue laser plus a yellow phosphor to create white light that gets separated into red, green, and blue and shines onto three separate 1080p LCD panels. This also gives us price points of $4,000, $6,000, and $8,000 respectively, so that's easy to follow. The lens remains all glass with 15 elements that allow for 2.1 to 1 motorized zoom range. Lens shift and focus are also motorized, which is great to see at this price point, but there's a small downgrade with the horizontal lens shift range limited to 24% of the image's width rather than the 47% that's offered on the 6050 UB, LS12000, and QB1000. I don't like that QB1000.
Well, it is in a different family, so that's why the name.
I understand changed, that, but it's just that numbers in the queue for whatever reason makes me think it's cheaper. Anyways, vertical lens shift range is still generous, a generous 96% of the image's height on the LS9000, though. And the final downgrade is that the LS9000 does not come with a ceiling mount or a cosmetic cable cover in the box, and of course no spare lamp either, as it is a laser projector with an estimated 20,000 hour lifespan to half brightness. Interestingly, the laser lifespan number is regardless of whether using eco, medium, or normal light mode. I bet that's going to end up becoming a problem for somebody at some point. Somebody's going to test that out. But enough with the small sacrifices, because there are some significant gains over the 6050 UB as well. The LS9000 refreshes its three 1080p panels at a whopping 480 Hz and wobbles the panels 4 times per frame, meaning full 4K 120 support, just like the LS12000. It also shares the same contrast rating of 2.5 million to 1, full on, full off. So this is just a slightly pared down version of the LS12000. Mm-hmm. Gaming response time remains at just under 20 milliseconds, and there are two HDMI 2.1 ports, one of which supports eARC with both Dolby Atmos and DTS-X pass-through. Perhaps the only disappointment is that there is no frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping on board. The 9000 uses the same 16-step manual slider to adjust the HDR10 brightness as the 6050 UB and the LS12000. You have to step up to the $8,000 QB1000 or higher in Epson's projector lineup before you get their dynamic tone mapping feature, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the LS9000 does support HDR10 Plus, which apparently Reavon couldn't do. So that's an option for dynamic metadata. No Dolby Vision, though, which obviously makes sense. At $4,000, the LS9000 stands alone in the projector market in offering 4K 120 support with a laser light engine and a motorized lens. There does not appear to be a white chassis home cinema counterpart. Perhaps that will come in the future, but for now, the home cinema 5050 UB remains in the lineup as a last of the lamp-based Epson projector models. Aww. So sad.
Yes, that's right. So, no, I'm really quite excited about this LS9000 because I don't love that the kind of entry level for 4K projectors has creeped upwards of $6,000, certainly $5,000. I very much appreciate that Epson is bringing out a laser projector that will actually put all 4K pixels on the screen. Granted, it's a 1080p native set of panels, but they are wobbled 4 times per frame, so every single pixel is on screen, and does so at, wobbling those panels at 480 hertz, meaning they can actually do 4K 120. It does have HDMI 2.1 ports, and it does show 4K 120 natively. So having all of that at the $4,000 price point, I'm really impressed by that. I'm very pleasantly surprised that they didn't raise the MSRP. I'm willing to sacrifice the ceiling mount that used to come in the box. I'm like, okay, if that's what you had to do to keep the MSRP at $4,000, I'm willing to sacrifice the included ceiling mount. I think that's pretty darn fair on Epson's part there. So yeah, the only thing is, yes, I would love for it to have had dynamic tone mapping. We know that Epson can do that because it is in their QB and QS series projectors that are way, way, way more expensive. But clearly those, the QB1000 and the QS3000 and 7000, those are targeted at going head to head with the JVCs and the Sonys. They know they can't get the same deep black levels as those liquid crystal on silicon projectors, but they are brighter. Dollar for dollar, the Epsons are brighter up there at the top of the market, and they do have the frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping up there. So that's the only thing I kind of wish, but yeah, $4,000, that's kind of unbeatable. I don't know of any competition that can really go directly head-to-head with all the features that the Epson LS9000 is offering. So that is going to get some recommendations from me, I am sure of it.
There you go. Leighton. Getting to the questions now. Leighton, now that he has his Sony X90L TV and he's really happy with it, he wants to finally enjoy some 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray discs to their fullest. Which player should he buy? Well, not a Reavon.
Not a Reavon, yeah.
He'd like to keep the budget to $300 or under, and he'd like it to support both Dolby Vision and Atmos.
Yeah.
That seems like a reasonable request.
Doesn't
there's
it, though?
the Panasonics and out there. And then what else? The Sonys are the only two, right? Panasonic and Sony? Choose one of those?
It's going to be a Panasonic or a Sony. And when you say, hey, I've got a TV that does Dolby Vision, I'd like my Ultra HD Blu-ray player to support Dolby Vision, which is a very reasonable thing to want, I'm going to say to go with a Panasonic. Because even though there is the Sony X700, there is the Sony X800 M2, those both technically support Dolby Vision and can be found in the, certainly the X700 can be found for under $300. The X800 M2 usually goes for a little bit north, around $350 or $400. But while those Sony players technically support Dolby Vision, they have the crazy thing I've never been able to figure out of you have to manually turn Dolby Vision on and off, meaning that, you go to play a disc that isn't in Dolby Vision, including a regular Blu-ray, not an Ultra HD Blu-ray, and it just sticks everything in a Dolby Vision container if you have left that setting on. And it's a bizarre way to do things. I have no idea why they could never update those players to automatically detect that Dolby Vision is on the disc and automatically turn on and off. Who wants it any other way? It's strange that was the way Sony did it. So I say get the Panasonic players. Now, the one you want to get most likely because of the price point that you mentioned is the Panasonic UB450. The issue is, I when I sent him the link via email, they were still showing, hey, add to cart, it's ready, it's in stock. And then this week when he was ready to buy, it was sold out. And that's from Panasonic directly. You can find it listed still on Amazon, but not like sold by Amazon. It's one of the third party marketplace, Amazon marketplace sellers selling through Amazon storefront. But you can still get the Panasonic UB450 that way. So because it's currently only in stock from third-party sellers, the price is between $200 and $260, but that's still under $300, right? So either way. Now, so there are three players more or less. I mean, there's a UB9000, which is Panasonic's flagship, which is way above the price point you're looking at. But so there's basically three players from Panasonic. There's the UB420, the UB450, the one I'm recommending, and the UB820. And the differences there are the UB420 does not support Dolby Vision, so that kind of eliminates it from here. What the UB420 does have is Panasonic's HDR optimizer, which I describe as pre-tone mapping for HDR10, where the Panasonic does the tone mapping ahead of sending it out to your display, but it is still static metadata. It's not frame by frame. It's not dynamic tone mapping. It's just pre-tone mapping it in the player before it sends it to your display, which can be a useful thing for projectors or TVs that have very limited light output. But for the new OLED that was just purchased, that's really not a necessity. So the UB450 does support Dolby Vision, but does not have that HDR optimizer. But when you have a lovely brand new OLED that easily hits 1,000 nits, I'm like, UB450, that's the one to get. The 820 has both. It has Dolby Vision and the HDR optimizer. So that's the easy way to go through there. But the 820 is above the budget that he wanted to pay. So that leads me to the 450.
When I click on it, it does show that you can add it for like $198.
Okay.
But it shows it sold through Amazon, not sold through Panasonic.
Exactly. That's right.
So yeah, yeah,
it seems like you can get a UB450. You might just have to follow the links around. That's all.
Yeah. So we just recently answered his second question, but could we go over it one more time for him? If he puts two subwoofers at the midpoints of his two side walls, does it make any difference if they're both facing the front wall or both facing the back wall or both facing across the room directly at each other? In essence, it doesn't matter. I mean, when it comes down to it, I like to have them all facing the same direction, whatever that is, but or at each other, I suppose. But it shouldn't make a real substantive difference.
Yeah, so like if we're dealing with front firing subwoofer, so if you had a down firing subwoofer, then it definitely would not matter. Yeah. you can face a down firing subwoofer whatever way the cabinet orients best, and that'll be fine. But if you got a front facing subwoofer, yes, on a very, very technical level, as you rotate one sub while leaving the other sub stationary, you do slightly alter the phase relationship between the waves that are coming out of those two subs. Now, some subwoofers do not have a fully variable phase knob. We prefer the ones that do, but some do not. And honestly, we love HSU subwoofers, but they do not have a fully variable phase knob. So if you have a subwoofer like that, that doesn't have a fully variable phase knob, then it is technically possible that, facing your forward front firing subwoofers in different directions, whatever those might be, can slightly alter the phase relationship between the two subs. So on a very technical level, we can't say that it literally makes no difference. It is possible for it to make some difference to the interaction of the waveforms that form in your room. But yeah, usually the simplest thing is to just have them firing straight across at one another, because mathematically, if you have two parallel wall surfaces and then you have the waves emanating straight out and facing each other, that is going to give you the mathematical calculation where they work the way that we're expecting them to work, where they're one is filling in the dips of the other with a hump from itself, and we get that evening out of the frequency response when they face each other. So
most of the time what ends up happening is that you just want the subwoofers to have the light that is on the back of them that tells you that they're on, to not be facing into the room where you're going to see it.
And then if you have a projection screen, I don't want it facing the projection screen either.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, you end up putting the back of it to a wall, and that puts the drivers in the right orientation most of the time.
That's right.
So it's one of those cases where you're like, well, I know I'm supposed to put them here, but which direction should they face? Mm-hmm. If I had my druthers, I would put them in this orientation. That's almost always the right orientation.
And if your subwoofers do have a fully variable phase knob, even just one of them, let's say you have two different subwoofers and one of them has a fully variable phase, that can completely mitigate any of the issues of having them rotated to facing different directions. You can just use the fully variable phase knob. It's trial and error,
right?
But you just have a bass sweep playing on repeat, and you just adjust that fully variable phase knob until you get uniform response across your seats.
When I say things like it doesn't really matter, what I'm saying is in most rooms with most people, the other problems within the room are going to so far exceed any issue you might have with the directions being slightly non-optimal that it will make an audible difference one way or the other. You could keep turning them whatever direction you want, and it's going to sound essentially the same because the problems within the room and the problems within other aspects of your bass response are going to overshadow anything that may happen because of, so functionally doesn't really make a difference. Mathematically, there is an optimal way to do it, but just because it's optimal doesn't mean it's gonna be like, oh my god, it's like a veil has been lifted. Jason would like to discuss OLED burn-in. He owned a 65-inch LG C8 OLED for a number of years now. Has gotten a lot of daily usage, and it's in a non-light controlled room, so it's turned up pretty bright. The sole source device is the Amazon Fire TV Cube, using a variety of popular video streaming apps. It has what appears to be some fairly obvious burn-in now, mostly visible in red, but also in blue and magenta. And there'll be pictures on the Flickr album as well as on the YouTube video, and you can see.
You can definitely see some uneven wear on this panel when you put up a full red screen, a full blue screen, a full magenta screen. You're like, that's some uneven wear on that OLED panel. No mistake in that.
Yeah. So is there anything that can be done to fix it, and what should be the normal life expectancy of a 2018 OLED TV anyways? So this is one of those issues that, like, I would tell people, most of the time, hey, you don't have to worry about burning your OLED. You just have to set it up properly. And once you set it up properly, it'll be fine. Don't have it in direct sunlight, and make sure you've got it set up properly. In this case, because of the use case, it's been turned up very bright, and that has made some of the phosphors wear unevenly. So what can be done to fix it? There's things you could try to do. Will it actually undo the damage? I would be surprised if it did. There are like the what do you call it, Rob?
The compensation cycles. Yeah. There are the automatic ones, and part of this is by default. After every 4 hours of use, and it is cumulative, right? So if you're watching it an hour a day, once you've done 4 days at an hour a day, that's 4 hours of use. It runs a very minor compensation cycle when you put the TV into standby, so not unplugging it from the wall, but just the regular power button. You put it into standby, and it runs a minor compensation cycle. Only takes like a minute or two, and you don't notice that it's happening because the screen is turned off. But by default, it does that every 4 cumulative hours. And then, depends on the model, but it's around like every 2,000 hours or so, it does a major compensation cycle, which actually they give you a little warning when it's about to do that. And because it does take around 20-25 minutes. And you can interrupt it, by turning the TV back on. So they give you that little warning. Say, hey, we're going to be offline here for 20 to 25 minutes to do this major compensation cycle. And so, what they're really doing there is sending in test voltages, reading back the feedback, which gives them an idea of how the resistance of each and every single little tiny subpixel in that OLED lattice has altered in its resistance, and they compensate for as they age. The resistance goes up, so they artificially boost the resistance on all the ones that haven't aged as much, and it evens out the wear on that panel, or the apparent wear, how it looks to your eye. So if you're telling me that I'm running this TV a lot of hours a day, every single day at a high brightness, there's a great chance that it's not getting to do those minor compensation cycles every 4 hours, right? If you've got this TV going for 12 hours a day straight without ever putting it into standby at any of those moments, it's not getting to do all those minor compensation cycles. Now, typically, when it does a major compensation cycle, a fair amount of this type of uneven wear on the panel does get mitigated, and there is the option to go into the user settings under the panel care section in the LG OLED's menus. You can manually activate one of those major compensation cycles. They don't recommend doing that on a frequent basis, but if you have visible wear like this, doing that is your best bet of it's probably not going to make it go to zero on, full field color slides like these. But it can definitely make a visible difference and improvement if it's been a while since your last major compensation cycle. And like I say, it's not getting to do those every 4 hour minor ones that it does by default. So the idea that you're going to get this looking absolutely pristine, don't hold out too much hope for that. But the possibility of it improving slightly, especially on that red color slide, which is really quite obvious, activating one of those major compensation cycles manually from the panel care setting in the menu, that has a good chance of making a visible difference there.
Yeah. He also has an 83-inch LG C2 OLED, much newer, obviously, and it's in a different room that is light controlled, plus the 83-inch TV doesn't get nearly as much use. Nevertheless, he would like to protect it from ever getting burn-in, so are there certain settings, either on the TV itself or the connected source devices, that will help prevent burn-in? I mean, we just kind of discussed that, but go on.
Well, there's more, yeah.
And has OLED technology improved in between 2018 and 2022 such that burn-in became less likely or no longer an issue? I mean, every iteration of OLED TVs, I think, have gotten better.
Yes.
I mean, they're paying attention to that and making sure they're as protected as they can be with the technology at the time. But it still requires, I mean, as long as you're setting it up so that you're not watching it 8 hours a day at high brightness, and never doing the compensation cycles, then it should be fine, I think.
Yeah. So they have gotten better and better. I'm a tiny bit surprised that it was a C8 that had the sort of visible uneven wear that you got, because there was, I might be recalling this incorrectly, but in my recollection of it, it was the C6 and the C7 were still using sort of the like second generation OLED panels, and I believe it was the C8 in 2018 that started using the third generation panels, which replaced the regular hydrogen element with heavy hydrogen, with deuterium, and that really, really helped at that time with lowering the chances of getting burn. And now, on all OLEDs, it is still possible to get uneven panel wear, but it has gotten better and better and better. Part of it is that they've gotten more and more efficient, so they're actually driving them, not nearly as hard for the same amount of light output, so that has really, really helped. But they've also just, refined and refined and refined, so it is much less likely to get burn-in on a OLED panel from 2025 than it was one from 2016, 2017, and 2018 as well. So a little bit surprised that it was a 28. If you had said this was a C7, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes a ton of sense, because they were definitely using the second generation panels back then, and they were much more prone to this type of uneven wear. But the safest thing you can do is, you're probably familiar in the picture settings, there is the OLED light setting, which is, functions very much like the backlight setting on an LCD. It's just the overall light level of the entire image goes up and down with that OLED light setting. Keeping that at certainly 40 or lower, 45 is typically a number given, but like 40 or lower for sure, makes it nigh impossible for you to get OLED burn-in. Now, when you're watching HDR, that automatically, that OLED brightness setting goes up to 100, and that is correct for that. So if you're watching HDR constantly, that might be the thing that puts it at a very slightly more risk. But the main things are, for standard dynamic range content, for all your menus and everything like that. And that is one thing you can do, right? For your source devices, make sure you're not having them just constantly output an HDR signal, right? By locking them in the Dolby Vision or the HDR10 output mode. Have them switch back to standard dynamic range for the menus in that, and have your OLED sets so that for standard dynamic range, that OLED light setting is at 40 or lower. Or certainly, 45 would be fine as well, but not up at 80 or something like a lot of the defaults are at. And then, do allow it to run those compensation cycles, right? Don't unplug your TV every time you stop using it, which is a little uncommon, but some people do that. Let it run those compensation cycles. It sounds like in the use case that you're doing, having the OLED light setting lower because you are in a light-controlled room for the 83-inch OLED, and letting it run those compensation cycles around every 4 hours shouldn't be a problem in the way you're using it in that room.
Yeah. Yes, that's the end of that, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Now we're on to C.
Ben.
Nope, we got one more for him.
Oh, we do have one more.
Yeah, see?
Okay, so he's thinking about replace a 65-inch OLED, and given that it will still be in a very bright room, getting lots of usage every day, would it make more sense to him to get an LCD TV? What would be his best choice with the best picture quality that would get the closest to OLED? So is he going to get a bigger TV? Is the question.
It doesn't sound like it's just he's got the one that has visible uneven panel wear. Yeah. He's like, okay, if I replace that, do I replace it with a up to date OLED 2025 OLED, or do I just go ahead and get an LCD?
I would get an LCD.
Okay.
Personally, it just, I mean, you get the extra brightness that you're looking for without worrying about, panel burn in or any damage there. And you're going to be sacrificing some stuff. It's not going to have the deep black levels, but you're in a room.
You're in a very
Are you really worried
room.
about it? Yeah. Are you really worried about it in this room? Or are you really worried about it from this panel? I often say, and I've said it this podcast many times, you buy for what you're using, what you're actually going to use it for. So the thought process may be, hey, I am going to eventually move, or I might someday move this TV to a guest room. I want to make sure it's still a good TV when I move it to the guest room. You can still get a good LCD TV that you can move to a guest room. Will it be as good as an OLED? No, but also you won't be worried about replacing it.
Yeah.
And it's a guest room, so who cares?
Yeah, like I'd
get an LCD TV.
I've got a Samsung LCD that I specifically got for gaming, and it's like, if that were an OLED, I'd be more careful about, like, okay, if I'm pausing this game, I'm going to make sure I put either a screensaver on or turn that OLED off. But it's like, because it's a Samsung LCD, I'm like, what? I just pause my game, walk away. Sometimes I forget about it for like 4 hours. I'm like, whatever. I'm not worried about it because it's an LCD TV. It sounds like for the 65-inch TV you have, you're kind of in that use case scenario where it's like, that TV's just running 12, 16 hours a day. If you want to never worry about it, it makes sense to me to get an LCD instead. So if you're okay with the price, if you want to get as close to OLED performance as you possibly can, it would be a Sony Bravia 9. They are expensive. They're the same price as the flagship OLEDs, right? So like a G5 OLED, same price for a Sony Bravia 9 mini LED backlit LCD. But if you want to get as close to OLED performance as you can, and you're okay with that kind of price, then Sony Bravia 9. If you want pretty darn close to that level of performance and a lower price point and slightly wider viewing angles, not as wide and even as OLED, but a little bit wider viewing angles than your typical LCD, then definitely have a look at a TCL QM8K. That's their newest 8 series from TCL, but that TCL QM8K, it's using their HVA panels, LCD panels, which do have a little bit wider viewing angle, so that helps if that's something you're looking for. Again, it's not as good as OLED, but it's a little bit better than most other VA LCD type panels, and the price on those QM8Ks, TCL has them on sale right now, and they're remarkably affordable. So that's the two I'd look at for sure.
All right. Ben appreciated our discussion last week about his open living room setup. He figures he will hold off on buying a new receiver to replace his Yamaha Avantage A2080 until Dirac Art is released for the Denon and Marantz receivers, and we get some reviews of it to figure out if it really is worthwhile to upgrade. Really is a worthwhile upgrade in a difference maker. For now, though, he was intrigued by our suggestion to fill the gap behind the large picture frame that hangs behind his sofa with insulation. This is the question I answered, by the way.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm pretty sure. The idea never occurred to him, but it makes sense, and the frame is about 1.5 inches deep, so it could hold a decent amount of insulation. What insulation material specifically do we recommend, and what's going to be the best method of holding it in place within the picture frame? So response was, rigid fiberglass board or rock wool is the easiest thing, and friction holds it in place. You just shove it in there, and it should be fine. Now you're like, well, so the rock wool panels are, either 0.5 inch or 1 inch or 2 inches or 3 inches or 4 inches thick, right? But you can buy them in whatever is available, and then your preference. So I would get an inch.
Okay.
To start with, because getting an inch and a half is not really going to happen, and then just put that in there. Now, if your picture has a dimension that is, more than 2 feet, 48 inches, then no, 4 feet, 48 inches, yes. Then you're going to have to lie the picture down on the ground. You might want to do this anyways, and then basically, like Jenga or Tetris in all the pieces, cut them. You can just cut them right there. It's not that hard, and you don't have to be that that exact. And then you're just kind of wedge them in there. Mm-hmm. Now you don't want them to be too tight because you don't want to crush it, but you do. It will hold on. It will hold itself in place, and then you just hang it back on the wall. You have like a 1/2 inch air gap behind there, which is fine. If you really want to be neurotic about it and get like get thicker or double it up so you have a 1/2 inch overlay, you could do that and then just like slice it down, cut it down with like some string or like wire will do it, like the wire that you would use to hang a picture. You can just go across the whole thing and it's going to put dust everywhere, or, little fiberglass or rock wool fibers everywhere that you'll have to vacuum up. But it's not like it's asbestos. It won't get into your lungs and give you cancer and stay there forever. It's just, you'll just make a mess. So you could completely fill it. You could completely fill it and then put like some sort of stops on the back to kind of hold it off the wall, so you have your air gap back again. So you have an 1.5 inches plus an air gap. You could have it sitting proud, make a bigger frame to go. I mean, you could do a lot of things. Mm-hmm. So if it were me, I would just take the 1 inch thick, shove it in there, get it all Tetrised in, and then put it back on the wall and call it good.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly second going for rock wool insulation. That's the easiest to work with. It holds its shape. It doesn't squish down over time or anything like that. Very easy to work with, easy to cut, easy to manage. And yeah, if it's kind of flopping out the back or anything like that, it doesn't have to be anything complicated. You could quite literally just put a little bit of picture hanger wire or string across the back, just like staple in the string on either end. So like just anything to mildly hold it in there. You could, of course, just put a little bit of mesh fabric over the back and just staple that along the outside edges. Like, this does not have to be expensive or complicated whatsoever. It's going to be on the back, so that if you've got some staples, it's not like you're actually going to see it once it's mounted on the wall again. So yeah, very very simple.
We'll say if you are going to staple something onto your picture frame, make sure that, because a lot of times what happens in my experience in my own house, I take the whatever I'm working on, I put it on the ground, right? Mm-hmm. Well, the ground may have a carpet or a rug on top of it, something semi-soft. Staples will not go all the way into whatever you're stapling it into if it doesn't have something to hold that wood in place. So you're going to want to take and maybe put a blanket or a sheet down on top of your tile or hardwood floor, put that picture frame down on top of that, and then do the stapling so that the staple, when it tries to go in, doesn't push the frame down into the carpet or the rug. So that's just a little tip from Tom.
Alrighty.
Wait, let's not call the podcast that.
Okay.
The little tip to help to make sure that your staples are fully sunk. Henry was happy to hear my plans for a small but dedicated home theater once I am moved into my new house. So we went back to the house this week to show 2 of the kids who hadn't had a chance to see it. Okay. And we were talking about the plans, and my wife started waffling on using that room as a home theater. So we will see what happens. Nothing is set in stone until it happens, but I'm still pushing for it, so hopefully. Henry was curious, though. Will Tom really be going for 9 speakers, a 5.2.4 configuration? Because didn't Tom say at one point that Atmos speakers didn't really make that much of a difference? Is he misremembering? Did Tom change his opinion? Are Atmos speakers actually a game changer? No. Atmos speakers are very high up on the walls in my previous home theater, and they did not get flooded. So I still have 4 Atmos speakers up on my ceiling. So would I be buying Atmos speakers? I'll be honest with you. In a 5-point system, I'm more inclined to want to put some overhead speakers to get a little bit more steering around the space. But I almost certainly would not buy speakers for it. The fact that I have them already is what really is dictating that decision. If I if I got the 5-point system set up, I think the chances of me going, what are you going to do? I'm going to add 4 more speakers on my ceiling is extremely low. So that's kind of the motivation there. It's just that they're still hanging on the walls and ceiling of my home theater and my other house, and I will take them down and bring them to the new place when the time comes.
And you do have a AV receiver on hand that is capable of going up to 11 speakers if you wanted to. So so you're closer to a why not than a going out of your way to do it type of thing.
Yeah. Believe me, running the wires is already demotivating enough for me. I'm just like, because I want to try to do the flat wire that you paint on. And I want to try that because I've talked about it a lot on this podcast, but I've never done it myself, so I'd like to do it. So in Henry's own setup, he uses a Marantz Slimline Cinema 70S receiver. It tops out at 7 speakers. He's only been using 5 speakers at the moment. Would adding 2 Atmos speakers to his ceiling be worth it?
Even I am very, very iffy on that. Yeah.
Okay. Will you notice them? The answer is, I think occasionally you will.
Okay. Especially if they're top middles, like directly overhead type of thing. Yeah.
If you're saying top fronts or front heights, I'm going to be like, nah.
Nah, front heights.
But if the only way I'm going to say it might kind of be worth it would be if they were top middles. You will notice them occasionally, and no one else will be impressed by this.
Yeah.
You will be the only one. So how much money do you have to spend? And like, is it like, oh, I've got money burning a hole in my pocket. I'm going to do this with it. I'm just going to spend it at Starbucks. I'm like, okay, well, get some speakers.
And the reason I'm quite iffy on it is because, if I'm going to install Atmos speakers, I want to install 4. I want to have, both front to back as well as left to right steering of those overhead sounds. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do 4, but that's not an option unless you buy a whole new AV receiver on top of things, which I'm definitely not going to tell you to do. So for 100% sure, the thing I would tell you to try before you purchase anything or do any sort of installation is make sure you do have the Dolby Atmos height virtualization turned on, because that's free. That's just a setting. It requires only 5 speakers to try it out. And if you're like, I like the difference between straight 5.1 playback and decoding versus Dolby Atmos height virtualization, I like the difference that the height virtualization makes, then, if it's no financial burden, if it's not that much hassle, installing an actual pair of top middle speakers, I do think is superior and mildly noticeable over what the virtualization does. But give that virtualization try if you haven't already. And if you're like, I really don't notice or don't care of that versus straight 5.1 decoding, then I wouldn't bother with the speakers. But if you're like, I really like that, then I'd maybe consider installing the speakers.
So lastly, he asks, what are my plans for source devices? Will it all be via Apple TV 4K, or will physical media and having a disc player still be a priority? There is no world in which I don't eventually get... I think I have a disc player somebody sent me.
Okay.
Somewhere in all of this. Right now I have an Apple TV 4K. Primarily I'll be using that because that's the easiest thing to use. I want to eventually get back into discs, and I swear to you, do not hold me to this. I want to set up a server and use Plex or something. And because I have learned my lesson, I will take up a server. I'm going to put it up as high as possible. I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that it works forever. And I will have backups of all my discs because I will not have to redo this whole thing again. So that is sort of my plan. Will I actually go through with any of it? I will have discs again. There's no doubt about that, because I want to have the best sound and the best
Did your
video.
Xbox survive, or did that die in the floods?
I think it died.
Okay. Because I was just going to say it. Xbox Series X, because you had one of the originals that did have a disc drive, so that could serve as an Ultra HD Blu-ray.
I don't 100% know.
Okay.
A lot of stuff got pocked into boxes. My wife and I were just talking about this. It's been almost a year, and I'm like, I can barely remember anything. It was just a blur. So much stress, and I was so exhausted. all the time trying to drive back and forth. We're talking like 18-hour days of just nonstop being wet and sweaty and throwing things away and dealing with whatever problems came up. And, you know, going to my parents' house and helping them, and going to other people's houses and helping them, and, you know, just trying to figure out what we were going to eat. It was a crazy time. So I can't tell you what did and did not survive. It's going to be like when we move into the new house, hopefully when we move into a new house, and we get everything moved back in, it's going to be like Christmas. We're like, oh my God, I forgot I had this, because there's so much stuff that's just been sitting in storage and we don't know what is what. So I don't remember there being an Xbox anywhere in that stuff.
Okay.
That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Mike, 20 years ago, Mike bought himself his forever speakers, a pair of Von
Schweikert.
I was never going to get that right. Von Schweikert VR4 Junior towers, and the little ones. I don't know what that means. He also bought their recommended center speaker to complete his front sound stage. So these are speakers that have like two separate boxes, like a woofer box and a mid-range and tweeter box that sit on top, and they're connected by a very impressive-looking cable that is that is probably not doing a whole lot of transporting electricity, but it looks cool. So you can like probably quad amp these things or something. I don't know.
Who knows?
Anyways, he loved those Von Schweikert towers so much that he wound up buying a second pair. He found a great deal on a pair that had a blemish in their veneer, so he bought those, and they now serve as surrounds. He runs a 5.2.4 configuration with a Marantz AV7705 Pre-Pro. When he listens alone, sitting in his middle seat, it all sounds terrific. His seats have high seat backs, so he knows they are not ideal acoustically speaking, but it was expensive seating and he still loves it, so he really doesn't have any plans or desire to replace the seats. Fair enough.
Indeed.
Comfortable seats are very hard to find, and when you find ones you like, you stick with them. It is gonna rain. Holy moly, like the light output from the window has gone down by 50%. It's like an OLED
cloud covered,
running extra bright mode for too long. Anyways, his question for us has to do with the placement of his surround speakers. Again, their towers, and specifically their height. He recently had the experience of listening to his system while sitting in one of the side seats rather than in smack dab in the middle, and that made him realize that for anyone in the side seats, the closest surround speaker really is a distraction. And the sound from the far surround speaker is really quite difficult to notice. So, it's a solution as simple as elevating the pair of surround speakers with raising them up so that tweeters are no longer at seated ear level, despite the raked back design of the Von Schweikert speakers allow the sound to clear the seat backs and reach the ears of all listeners in the couch, while reducing the distractions from the closest surround speaker. If so, how do we suggest going about physically raising his surround speakers? He is friends with the contractor who could build platforms for him, but hasn't really seen anything he could just go buy from a store that fits the bill. But do we know of anything? Yeah, just to get some like cinder blocks.
Put a piece of fabric over them. Yeah, you can adjust the height you like. I mean, it doesn't have to be like those.
There's a lot of options here.
Square cinder blocks. It can be like, patio blocks. It can be the bricks, right? But you just put a nice piece of fabric over it, and you can adjust the height to pretty much whatever you want.
Do we know of anything? So we just came up with some gestures right there. I mean, it can be as makeshift as that, to be honest with you, like some bricks or cinder blocks with, like, if you wanted to have like a solid surface on top, you could get like, I mean, I've literally gone to like, I'm not super proud of this, but I've gone to like tile places and asked for like, oh, can I get a sample of this? Yeah. And I used that for years to make dough in my kitchen because I had a weird countertop that wasn't flat. It was tiles all tiled together. So it was hard to make dough on. So I got a big, like 2 foot by 2 foot piece of like a marble that they were given. And I'm like, can I have a sample of this? And they were like, yeah, take it. And I was like, great. And I used that forever. Or should he actually just replace his surround towers with a pair of bookshelf speakers on speaker stands? One concern is that he's got 2 cats in his house, or is he the one living in the house that belongs to the 2 cats? I'd like to jump on all tall things. So would bookshelf speakers on stands be a concern? It's theoretically possible to replace the seating, but like he said, he really doesn't want to do that. So that would be a measure of last resort. What's our advice? There's no reason why you can't raise the thing. Honestly, I see no reason why you can't just not use the bottoms.
That's what I was going to suggest, is that these definitely look like
hook them up and just
very
use the tops as surrounds, as like bookshelf speakers, and put them on stands or whatever. And you can fill the stand. You get stands like from Monoprice or Sanus that you can fill with like kitty litter or whatever it is.
I bet he has some kitty litter.
He might have some. Yeah, you're probably buying them bulk anyways. Just use that and take the other parts and put them in the closet someplace.
Now, the only thing I would say there is that these ones, they do cross over from that upper section of these speakers to the lower section at 250 hertz. So I might not want to completely eliminate the bottom section.
Can you control that crossover, or is that not controllable?
No, the crossover is not controllable. You can control sort of the level of the rear-facing tweeter. That's what the dial on the back is.
Oh, is that what that dial is? Okay.
Yeah, but so I mean, the other thing is you could like put a riser in between the bottom section that has the two woofers and the top section that has the mid-range driver and the tweeters. You could like do the raising of the height part there, because first of all, I do think that just elevating the tweeters of these speakers by 1.5 feet, 2 feet. That's kind of all you need to do. It was pretty. That was always the standard practice before Atmos came around, and all of a sudden they were saying put all of your floor level speakers at tweeter ear height. It was always the practice to at least mildly elevate your surround speakers. And to me, it has only ever made logical sense that you want a clear line of sight to all of the ears of the listening audience, and that requires you to elevate it. But I don't think you have to do much more than elevate these speakers. And we are talking about, probably about 18 inches would do well. I'm assuming that these are very close to seated ear height the way they are now. You get them up 1.5 feet, and that's going to work quite nicely. So, honestly, I'd be just going over to like Home Depot or Lowe's. I'd be grabbing some like bricks or patio blocks or something like that. I'd throw some fabric over it, and it looks like a perfectly nice platform. That'd be my solution. Yeah,
I might put something squishy between the feet or the bottom of the speaker and the and whatever you're putting on top of. Yeah. But other than that, Infinite Gary. One thing Gary likes about watching sports in 4K is they can often clearly see the time on a tablet or on a coach's watch. He likes to check it against his atomic clock at home to see exactly how much delay there is in the TV signal. Anybody else do that? Or is that just a thing in his brain? That has never occurred to me, my man. I'm not saying that you're weird for it. I don't think that's weird. I think that now I might do it. But I never really thought of that.
No, I think it has been a thing I've it's not something I've ever specifically gone looking for, but like if I'm watching something live, might be news coverage, right? Might be a sporting event or something like that. If there's a clock prominently displayed, then I might make a note of, what I'm seeing in that image is like 1 minute behind real time or something like that. It has occurred to me, but it's never something I've gone officially looking for.
Okay, so I desperately need to use the restroom. So go ahead and read Matthew's question.
That's what I shall do. There we go. So Matthew says that the majority of his interest in home theater has been on the audio side of things for most of his life, but he's recently found himself getting into the video side of things a little bit more. So he doesn't want to go tumbling down a rabbit hole too far. He's hoping we can offer some sane and rational advice. Happy to help if we're able to. So he bought himself an Epson LS9000 projector and a 150-inch silver ticket screen. His room is fully light controlled, and after following some picture settings advice that he found online, he's pretty darn happy with the image that he's seeing. But of course, he knows that professional calibration is an option, and as soon as he started looking into that, he quickly came across all the hype about outboard video processors like the Mad VR Envy or the Lumagen video processor models. Both of those companies have introduced less expensive, quote-unquote, entry-level video processor models a little while back, late last year, but they still cost several $1,000s. So he wants to know, what is worth the money? What is not worth the money? Would paying a professional calibrator make a huge difference? Would it only be worthwhile to hire a professional calibrator if he also buys a Mad VR and or a Lumagen? Is all of it just kind of an absurd waste of time and money? Or is there some sweet spot middle ground that is like beyond adjusting the user menu controls yourself that will noticeably improve the image, but without going overboard and spending thousands of dollars without it really being worthwhile? yeah, very, very reasonable set of questions. So the first thing I want to say, Matthew, is like specific to you with the equipment that you've chosen with that Epson LS9000. I'm assuming since you followed online picture settings suggestions from, I don't know where it was exactly, but if it was Projector Central or Projector Reviews, then they would have told you to put it into its natural picture mode. The Epson LS9000 is one where once you've set the picture mode for the standard dynamic range content and done any calibration of its settings in that, then it automatically goes into a natural picture mode version for HDR content, and you don't really need to do any further calibration in HDR, except for you have the option of changing the laser light output mode. So if you want the brightest for HDR, you're going to have it in normal or high mode, however they label it in that particular model, but you have the option of lowering that laser light mode, which of course just cuts the light output, but that's about the only setting you can really adjust going from SDR to HDR. So the thing is, the Epson LS9000 in its natural picture mode is very close, very close to providing an accurate, to industry standard image for you, where there can be a little bit of variation if you are a purist who wants, dead accurate colors, dead accurate grayscale and white point. Having a professional calibrator or investing in the measurement equipment for yourself and buying Calman calibration software, you can technically get its color points, its grayscale, its white balance to be even more accurate than it is out of the box. But by all accounts, you're in that natural picture mode right out of the box, if not under the visually perceptible threshold of errors, so close to it that it's, if you're asking the question, will it make a huge difference getting it professionally calibrated? No. I'm very confident in saying it will not be a huge difference. There could be a small difference. It could be technically more accurate. There is some unit-to-unit variation. So I don't want to say that a professional calibration in a specific situation is not worth it at all. If you're a professional, if you really, really care about the nitty-gritty, then it could be, but it is not going to be a huge difference. When it comes to the... Oh, so yeah, go ahead on that part first, Tom.
Yeah, that's unfortunately been the new... Oh, Jesus Christ. Hold on.
I don't know. Okay, there goes Tom again. So I'll just carry on what I was going to say, which is that on the video processor side of things,
Go lie down.
This one is a little bit iffy to me because I can.
There was some thunder.
Okay, that's fair enough. Doggy got scared. I can make an argument for adding a video processor to the Epson LS9000 because, like we were talking about in the news section, the LS9000 does not do frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping.
Yes.
It does basic, standard, static metadata tone mapping. It does that perfectly well, and it gives you a 16-step manual slider that you can adjust on the fly in real time while content is playing, because there is some HDR content that just overall, when you watch it on that projector, you're going to be like, everything just looks overly dark. But you can just bump up that 16-step slider until you say, oh, yeah, that looks very good. And there is some HDR content that you're like, everything looks kind of washed out. And you can just lower that 16-step slider and get it looking darn good. But it does not do frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping. And that is something that a Mad VR could add to your system, or a Lumigen could add to your system. And so I can make the argument, right? Like, if money is no object, if money's no problem, like, that is a visible and I can argue worthwhile addition that it could give you. And I would not want to set up one of those external video processors without having it calibrated. Like, basically, if you get the video processor, then yes, get it calibrated professionally, because I wouldn't want to do it without that. So it's kind of I'm landing on all or nothing. That's where I end up landing in this case, because without the video processor and how good it is out of the box, I'm like, it's not making a huge difference to get it professionally calibrated. I would probably not do it unless you're just a stickler and you just really, really want to do it, in which case you probably wouldn't have even asked the question. Or if you decide I really want that frame by frame dynamic tone mapping, then you spend the thousands of dollars and you get it professionally calibrated. That's
I think in my mind, at least, when we're making recommendations like this about whether or not you should do a thing, my thought process often comes back to, is the difference going to be big enough for you, and is the difference going to be big enough that other people are other people are going to basically praise you or notice that difference? And in the case of video processing and calibration, it used to be, the difference was night and day between what your TV came as and what you could get it to look like.
Really inaccurate.
And nowadays it's just no one's ever going to notice but you, and you might not even notice. So half the time. So, if you A/B'd it, you go, oh yeah, there's a difference.
Sure.
But it would take that. It would take that quick comparison. It's not going to be like, oh, I'm on a bus and now I'm in a Volkswagen Bug. These are two different things, completely different things. I can know this right away. That's just not going to be the case. So this huge difference you're asking for, I don't think you're ever going to get huge.
No.
Even though the people who have already bought these things are going to tell you for sure it's huge. Everyone notices. Their wife noticed from the kitchen.
One of the interesting things that's out there is like, okay, it's like, because honestly, for about the same price in total, it's like, you can get one of these Epson projectors, 4K laser projectors, and the entry-level MadVR Envy processor, together for about the same price as just a JVC projector or just a Sony projector on its own. I've made the argument plenty of times that, especially with the current generation of the JVCs and the Sonys, like, I know there's the people who still swear by adding the MadVRs and the Lubigens to them. I'm like, you really don't need to if what you're after is really quite accurate to the source dynamic tone mapping. Where the MadVRs and the Lubigen crowds come in is so many people love to see more shadow detail than you're technically supposed to see. There's this below black information that the MadVRs and the Lubigens can retrieve and let you see it. But I'm like, I've always made the argument of, like, it is below black. I'm not really supposed to be seeing the below black, but some people are like, there's detail down there, and I love that I'm able to see it. And I was like, that's okay. It's your projector. You can do it. But when they argue that that's how it's supposed to be, I push back on that a little bit, because I'm like, no, it was supposed to be below black. Like, they didn't intend for you to see that particular detail. So I argue against that.
People spend a lot of money, and they want to be able, in their own minds, to justify that purchase. And that's one of the ways they do it. But don't let it convince you that you need to make that purchase, because they've already purchased it, and now they've got to justify how much money they spent to themselves.
The other
and they
thing
do that online by speaking very loudly.
The other thing that
it's just the way it is.
I do like about when you can do a calibration via the MadVR or the Lumigen is that ideally what you would do is a lot of these projectors, right, with these laser light engines, the exact color points of the laser light is like beyond the color gamut spectrum of even DCI P3. They're outside of that. Now, when you run the projector without one of these processors in the signal chain, you normally just put it in the automatic color gamut mode so that it matches itself to the incoming signal. But that does mean it's actually like kind of pulling back on how wide the color points theoretically could be. With the MadVR or the Lumigen in the signal chain, you put the projector permanently in its native color mode. You're like, forget about color point accuracy. Just go as wide in color availability as the projector can natively do. And thankfully, these projectors all have like a native color mode. It looks weird when you watch content if you turn that mode on. All the colors look wrong and way too oversaturated. But you can put the projector into that mode and then accurately dial it back in via that external video processor, and sometimes that lets you get a little bit wider and actually technically more accurate color than the automatic process that the projector has built into itself, where sometimes it's a little overly conservative, or it has trouble dialing it in just perfectly the way the external video processor can go. So that's what I mean. It's for the really nitpicky that you could do it. If you don't want to spend the thousands of dollars, then I say don't spend any money at all. Continue enjoying your settings, because that natural picture mode out of the box is darn close.
All right. Brandon would like our recommendations for a portable Bluetooth speaker, but not just any popular model. He wants one that with the most transparent, neutral frequency that doesn't sound like it's been EQ'd to within an inch of its life. What do we suggest? Any portable Bluetooth speaker is going to be EQ'd, whether you really like it or not. That's just sort of how
I think
it goes.
I know what he means, though, where like some of them, like you can tell that they're just like DSP'd to the verge of what they can do, and then some of them just have a plainly EQ'd sound with tipped up bass and tipped up treble, which is the most common thing that you're going to find. So he's like, I don't want that. I want good, what I go for in my house, neutral sounding speakers, but in portable Bluetooth form. Is there anything that can fit the bill for that?
Yes. So, and you can still get this speaker right now. I did a review for it back in 2023, in May of 2023. So it's been around, but it's still available even on the website. And I think right now they're saying it's got like a $40 off coupon. Okay. It's $40 off everywhere. You go to Amazon, there'll be $40 off. And it's a Soundcore Motion X600. Okay. So there's an X something else as well. There's an X500, which is actually newer, but smaller. So that came out like a year later in 2024. But the X600 is like shorter and wider. Okay. It promises spatial sound, which technically works if you put your head right smack dab in the middle of the speaker. Generally speaking, though, the X600 is a very well controlled, sort of neutral-ish speaker as you're going to get. Now, you asked for Bluetooth. You did not say it had to be waterproof or weatherproof.
You did say portable, so it needs to have a battery.
This is everything. It's got a battery. Don't worry about that. But it's not one that you would want to take. I don't think that you would want to take to the beach. You probably could, but I wouldn't. This is not one that screams to me, "Hey, take me to the beach and I'll be fine. I can float down the river with you." They do make that one as well. It's like a Boom. I don't know, was it Soundcore Boom 2 is good for that, but that one I think is a little bit more plasticky feeling and doesn't quite have the neutrality of the Motion X series. Okay. So that X600 is like $159.99 right now. And that's well within, I don't know what your budget is.
Yeah, he didn't mention a budget. He didn't mention size restraints. But out of the ones I was going to mention, that is less expensive. So that's great. Tom has introduced an option there at under $200. So the first one that jumped to my mind, it's not cheap. It's not small, but it is portable. It has a handle. It has a nice long 24-hour.
Everything's portable if you try hard enough.
Sure, but I mean, this has a handle. It is meant to be moved around. It's just not teeny tiny. But yeah, $500 will get you JBL's Boombox 3. I like this unit a lot. It plays nice and loud. It's got a nice long 24-hour battery life. It does have a carrying handle. It has that sort of classic boombox size and shape that you might have remembered from your cassette boomboxes. But yeah, it is $500, but this is IP67 rated, so it's very water and dust resistant. A lot to like about this. I like the sound quality on this. It has an overblown bass boost mode if you want it, because so many people do, but you don't have to turn that on. And when you don't, it has pretty darn neutral sound. It's pretty darn good. And just because it has the power and output capabilities given its larger size than a lot of other Bluetooth speakers, it doesn't have that really strained, overly EQ'd sound to it. So I like this one quite a lot, but it might be too expensive. It might be too large. So a little bit smaller, a little bit less expensive, but still more expensive than what Tom mentioned. Marshall has a nice little model called the Kilburn 3. Again, it's got a carrying case strap, but it's $380. This thing isn't cheap. You are definitely paying for some of the styling and name brand being on this. But this has pretty darn nice neutral sound quality coming out of it. Less bass than the JBL Boombox 3 because it just isn't as big. Its drivers are not as big. Its amplifier is not as powerful. But it's a nice, design. A lot of people really, really like the looks of these Marshall Bluetooth speakers. So if the price and the size are acceptable,
I do not like the look of that Marshall.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's a love it or hate it.
Yeah, it looks like a little portable amp, like
does.
a guitar amp.
That's no surprise. It's Marshall.
Yeah, I looked up the Soundcore Motion X600.
Okay.
It is, like I said, $160. Yeah. It's IPX7, which means it has no dust rating.
Okay.
But it has full waterproof rating, which is 7.
And the Marshall does have an IP rating of 54, so it is not as dust or water resistant as the JBL Boombox 3, which is IP67. But yeah, it is got some dust and water resistance in that Marshall one as well.
All right, so we have some time. Let's get to some of Sasi's.
Let's put a dent in it.
Unending questions. We've previously talked about how speaker sensitivity used to typically be given as a certain decibel level at 1 watt, using 1 watt. But these days it's more common to see 2.83 volts instead of 1 watt. That has kind of become the standard now. And we've explained how using 2.83 volts for the spec means that at genuine 8 ohm impedance speakers are using 1 watt, but 4 ohm speakers are actually using 2. So why did we land on 2.83 volt spec? Is there a practical reason, or is it all because it makes the figures look better in the marketing? I mean, I don't know the actual reason, but I'm assuming that they said, okay, we can't keep using 1 watt because it's not fair to different speakers based on their ohmage or whatever. If we put 2.83 volts, that gives us 1 watt at 8 ohms, and then everybody else can just do what they do with what they do with that volt spec. So I would assume that's what it is. What is it, Rob?
So, I mean, again, I don't know this for 100% sure, but I just want to start on the math side of things because, very simply, just basic Ohm's law, basic how do you calculate watts. We start on the potential amount of power side of things. So we just have volts and amps. If we multiply together volts and amps, we do get watts, but that can be a slightly different number than just volts times amps in the real world because we have things like losses. We don't have 100% efficiency. We have potential power on one side, volts times amps, versus actual power on the other side in terms of watts. But mathematically, volts times amps equals watts. Now, basic Ohm's law, that would be V times I, volts times amps equals W equals watts. But I, amps, can be expressed as volts over impedance, V over R. You can replace that I figure in the equation with V over R. So if we do that, we now have V squared over R. So if we say, okay, I want this to equal 1 watt, and I know that my impedance is 8 ohms, and I've filled in those figures on both sides of the equation, then if I just take the square root of V and I want it to equal 1, so that we know that the volts squared is going to be 8, right? 8 over 8 is going to equal 1. So we're taking the square root of 8. What's the square root of 8? 2.8284. So we round that to 2.83. So that's where that 2.83 volts figure came from. It is just purely mathematical, purely basic Ohm's law. If I have 1 watt and I know I have an 8 ohm load, then the voltage has to be 2.8284 to round it to 2.83 volts. That's where that figure came from, nothing more than that. So why did we end up going to that? Well, it's because if we attempt to say that we're using 1 watt to calculate the sensitivity, there's a pretty big real world problem with that, which is that the impedance of speakers varies quite a bit. It goes up and down. If you plot speaker impedance versus frequency response, you get a varying impedance graph. It is not a steady line or, something that is very easy to average out. You can have pretty big swings in a speaker's impedance. So it is in that regard more fair to say we're going to hold the signal level, we're going to hold the voltage level steady. The impedance of the speaker is going to do whatever it's going to do. As a result, the wattage for any given frequency is going to be what it's going to be. But if we're trying to hold it at 1 watt constantly, it would mean we have to backwards already know what the varying impedance of the speaker is going to be and then alter the voltage signal level in the test signal depending on what frequency we're testing. Like that it doesn't logically make a lot of sense, right? It makes more sense to hold the signal level steady, and then the impedance of the speaker is going to be what it's going to be, and the wattage is going to be what it's going to be. But at least we know the signal level was constant across whatever speaker we were testing. So it was just that 8 ohms nominal was like the common thing. 1 watt originally was the common thing, so we worked our way backwards to 2.83 volts. But then we're like, well, if that worked, why don't we just hold the voltage steady? And then, the rest is going to fall where it may. So does that mean that, a speaker that dips down to 2 ohms at some frequency, all of a sudden it's using more wattage at that particular frequency when the signal level is held steady? Is that a fair comparison to a speaker that doesn't dip down as low in ohmage? Does it mean that at a peak output level at that given frequency, some amplifiers are simply not going to be able to deliver that much wattage? Like, all of that is true. But when we're talking about basic sensitivity, we're talking about not stressing the output capabilities of these speakers whatsoever. We're saying at, low signal, low wattage levels, what's just the basic response of the speaker? Any competent amplifier can deliver that amount of wattage. If it's oh my goodness, 8 watts instead of 1, any competent amplifier is going to be able to do that. And if we're producing north of 80 decibels anechoically from 1 meter away, at that point, it's like, we're getting those 75 decibels that we're aiming for at the seat without much problem, without taxing anything in this system. And that's why, to me, it makes logical sense that that's the sort of fair comparison we landed on. We'll hold that signal steady because it's not realistic to say, we're gonna vary our signal because we somehow already know exactly what the impedance at any given frequency anywhere in this test signal is going to be. Like, it just logically doesn't make sense.
All right. Can we explain how amplifier gain and input sensitivity work? He's seen it mentioned that the RCA outputs of most AV receivers can supply 2 volts and most XLR pre-outs can supply 4 volts. Then he's looked at the input sensitivity specs for amplifier brands like Outlaw, Emotiva, and Monoprice, Monolith, and they list figures like 1.2 volts, 1.6 volts, 1.7 volts for full rated power. So it seems like any AV receiver that can supply 2 volts will have no problem driving these amplifiers to full rated power, correct?
Yep, correct.
I mean, that's how it works. Basically, think about the way that the volts, it changes the volts in order to tell the amplifier how much power to put out at any given thing. So, if it's under 2, then it's fine. But then Buckeye's Class D amplifiers have a much higher voltage figures for their input sensitivity, sometimes as much as 10 volts, and typically right around 3 volts at the lowest. So what happens there if your AV receiver can only supply 2 volts? Are you just missing out on some potential headroom? Is there an easy way to calculate how much, or is it actually unsafe in some way? Can you even count on all AV receivers to supply at least 2 volts from their pre-outs? And would the 0 dB mark on the volume dial always correlate to a 2 volt output? And what about inputs that are spec'd for a certain dB gain? Like THX amps are always spec'd at plus 29 dB gain on the RCA inputs and 23 dB gain on the XLR inputs. What does that mean in terms of other voltage specs? I don't know. That's the first time I ever read this question, and I'm like, that's a lot.
It's been here for a while. You had opportunity.
I never scrolled down this far.
Yeah. So let's go through some of these. I might hop around here a little bit, but so many of the AV receivers that we recommend, being from Denon and Marantz and Onkyo, Audioholics has done a good job of measuring these, and they can output more than 2 volts from just their RCA outputs without too much trouble. But there have definitely been some mass market receivers. There were a number of Yamaha AV receivers. I don't think the current model lines, but going back, previous generations and that weren't quite getting to 2 volts at the RCA output. They were more like 1.6, 1.7, something along those lines, which, as you pointed out, for a lot of the Class AB amps from the big brands that we're talking about all the problem, time, no problem, right? The monoliths 1.7 volts, right? And the Yamahas could do that. They couldn't quite do 2, but they could do like 1.6, 1.7. So all that's saying is, yes, there's a full rated power saying, hey, we can deliver 200 watts per channel RMS. We can deliver 400 or 600 watts peak for a very short duration of time. To reach those output levels, we need 1.7 volts coming in from the signal, whatever that might be, XLR, RCA, whatever it might be. And if the pre-out from your receiver can do that, then yes, you can reach the full rated power. What if your pre-out can't do that? What if it needs 2.0 volts to reach full rated power, and you have one of those older generation Yamahas that can do 1.6 or 1.7? There's no danger. You're not going to blow anything up. Mm-hmm. It just means that, yes, they're actually that amplifier is capable of delivering a little bit more headroom. It's basically as if, hey, when you're playing back some music, not everything is playing back at the loudest it can possibly be, right? That means that the signal level is lower most of the time. The voltage that's coming out of there is in milliwatts. It's not even close to, or millivolts. It's not even close to 1 volt. You're well under a volt the vast majority of the time. So as far as the amplifier is concerned, if your AV receiver's pre-outs top out at 1.6 volts, it's as if that's the loudest the music ever got, right? It's not like, oh, I can go louder, so I'm going to panic and blow up because I didn't get 2 volts. It's just like, no, I'm assuming you just wanted to play everything quieter than I'm capable of playing. And so there's no danger whatsoever. But it does mean that there is some more headroom in that amplifier, that if you had more signal voltage, it could play louder, it could go higher, it could deliver more wattage. So let's see, what have we missed here? Yeah, how is the gain structure working? Okay, so inside the amplifier, it's going to have a limit in terms of how much amperage it can deliver. Buckeye does a really great job of saying exactly the maximum amperage that their amplifiers can deliver. And I think, ATI certainly does that. So I think Monoprice has that listed as well. Like, here's how much amperage we can deliver. And that's just limited by that big old capacitor bank, the power supply that's in there, and then the limits of the output transistors on the amplifier itself. Like, they have a limit to how much amperage they can allow through. They're kind of like gates, and it's how wide open can the gate get. So that's kind of a fixed figure based on the design of the amplifier. It's like, we can let through 25 amps, and we can't let through more than 25 amps. So then it becomes a matter of, okay, we go back to that original thing. Volts times amps equals watts. It really is kind of as simple as that when you're just calculating what it is. And then there is a power factor to it. That's all your losses to heat, inefficiencies, and that's often around 0.8, 0.9, something like that is your power factor. So that's why the wattage on the output might be a lower number. It is typically a lower number than strictly the volts times the amps. But if we're saying, okay, I've got 25 amps that I can let out of my output transistors, and I want to reach 100 watts, well, then I need 4 volts, right? That's what I need. 4 times 25 is going to give me 100. That's what I need. Or if there's a power factor correction in there of 0.8 or whatever, then maybe I need 5 volts or something along that line. And then we're like, okay, but we know we're getting 2 volts coming out of the RCA signal level at maximum. That's what's coming out. I need to boost that voltage before I apply it to the amplifier's output transistors and have all that amperage flowing in response to the voltage. And that is the gain stage. Your preamplifier does this to the line level signal, and then the amplifier also has a fixed or sometimes even a variable amount of voltage gain that it applies. And all it's doing is, like, if I know how much amperage I have available in my amplifier design, how much mathematically do I need to boost that voltage that came in so that I can reach the output wattage that I want to? And that's why you'll see some amplifiers have a little bit of variance in the amount of gain that you're going to have. It's boosting that voltage before it gets applied to the amperage inside of the amplifier circuitry. So in the THX designs, it's like, no, we've fixed what the gain is going to be. we know what the amperage is going to be, so that determines how many watts come out of this amplifier. If you're working the other way and you're like, this is how many watts I want to get, and this is how many amps my MOSFETs can let through, then I might have to make the gain higher. We've seen some amplifiers that have 32 decibels of gain, right? But it's a 500 watt maximum amplifier. It's got 28 amps that it can put in there, so it needs 32 decibels of gain to get up to that 500 watt figure, when the input signal is going to be 2 volts. So over at Buckeye, they've got some of these designs where like, well, here's the maximum wattage that we know can come out of this amplifier. Here's the amount of amperage that can come through the output transistors that we're using. Those 2 figures are fixed. How much gain do we need? And it turns out sometimes they need a lot of gain because some of these are like 1,200 watt amplifiers that they're offering. Yeah. So you just need to multiply the voltage until you get to the level that you need, and you end up with a 6 or 7, volts RMS that needs to come in based on, the figures that they're trying to hit. So, were you following along? Did I miss anything in that explanation that he was asking there?
I don't think so. I think you got it all.
Yeah, I think
except for maybe the XLR versus RCA. Sometimes they're different.
Sure. Well, that's just because it actually originated as the same signal, but then in the XLR version, you duplicate that signal.
Yeah.
And then while it's going through the wire, right? So before you send it out of the XLR output, you take the duplicated signal and you invert it. And so they go down the wire, one right side up, the duplicated version upside down. And then when they get to the other end, at the amplifier end, you invert the duplicated one again, so it's back to normal, and you put those together. And so guess what? They doubled up. You get double, and double is about 6 decibels. So that's why you have the difference between 23 dB gain on the XLR and 29 dB gain on the RCA. And then the reason you did the whole inversion and uninverting it is that any noise that was picked up in the cable along the way gets canceled out, and you get this sort of free gain. It's not really free because the thing that output the signal originally had to duplicate it and send it out, so it was sending out twice as much voltage to begin with. It's just one of them was inverted. So if you just put them together immediately, they'd cancel each other out. But on the other end of it, you're canceling out the noise and getting back some free gain when you do that. So now the amplifier connected to the XLR connection doesn't have to apply as much voltage gain itself, because it's as if it's got twice as much gain from the source device to begin with.
All right, what's our reaction? Let me see, how much time do we have left?
Oh yeah, we got at least 10 minutes here.
We got time. What's our reaction to speaker reviewers who are also dealers for certain speaker brands? Not to put too fine a point on that, but both Amir over at Audio Science Review and Aaron from Aaron's Audio Corner posted Clipple measurements and reviews of ASIC.
I think it's ASI. Asi, yeah.
Asi Labs speakers, which are a brand based in Korea. Both were rave reviews, highlighting ruler flat on-axis frequency response and wide even dispersion. But Amir and Aaron had a bit of a public disagreement because Amir's other company, which is run by his brother, has agreed to be the American distributor for I don't know, whatever.
ASCII,
speakers.
Whatever it is. ASCI, so ASCII, something like that.
I don't know. And they've been a JBL and Revel dealer for a long time. Aaron has said he considers an arrangement like this to be a conflict of interest, even though he has no disagreement with the Clipple measurements that were posted. And then there were other instances that Sasi can think of, such as Matthew Pose being a per listen dealer and Gene from Audioholics having involvement with the design of certain RBH speaker models. Do we draw a hard line in the sand somewhere when it comes to speaker reviewers having a business relationships with certain speaker brands? What are our thoughts?
There should be disclosures. That's
all that comes down to. Yeah. So, this podcast has never really had any sponsorships of any kind. We've never had any advertisements and stuff, and that's mostly because we're not big enough for anybody to care. But at the same time, it's always been a concern of mine that if we were to have like SVS be like a sponsor, and then we do advertisements for them at the beginning or whatever, that people would no longer take our recommendations for SVS speakers or subwoofers seriously, which I think would be a valid criticism, a valid concern from people. Oh, they advertise, therefore they have to recommend them. Mm-hmm. But then you have the other side of it, which is, and I have been on the other side of it, which is we don't take advertisements from companies that we don't believe their products are any good. Okay. Because we don't want to be associated with bad products.
Right.
So which is it? Is it that, some company spends enough money and therefore I say their products are good, or I won't take money from a company who I don't think has good products. You can't know that as somebody who's sitting there. So all you can do is disclose. And I mean, let's be serious. This whole, if you've both done measurements, the measurements are the same, and it doesn't matter that you're a dealer for them or not. You got the measurements; they're right there.
Something like that. Something like just taking and posting clippable measurements. I still want a disclosure attached.
Yeah.
But that's the sort of thing where I'm like, well, I mean, there's two possibilities. Either they took the measurements and they posted them as they are, which is okay. That's as close to objective as you can get. It still doesn't mean that there aren't potential inaccuracies or mistakes that were made or something like that. But if you're just taking the measurement and posting, it's like that's as close to objective data as you can present. I still want it to be disclosed on the business side of things. But yeah, I mean, the only other possibility is that you messed with the numbers beforehand, and that's why something like objective measurements is a very nice thing to have, because those should be reproducible, right? Just basic scientific method. Somebody else should be able to check your work. They should be able to confirm with the same and a different method of obtaining those figures. And if that all lines up, then even if you're accepting money from them as a company, as a sponsor, it doesn't alter that you gathered data and presented it. That's fine. But yeah, something like, I follow The Verge. They do a good job of, they have an explicit policy that is stated, company policy. They have a firewall between their editorial division and their marketing division. And then the editorial division always mentions in a disclosure, yes, we have a business relationship with whatever company they're reporting on. They have a licensing agreement with one of the AI companies where they sell their Verge articles to that AI company to train on, but then they also report on that AI company and others. They put that disclosure in their articles or in their podcast, and then they make the distinction, but our editorial team has no knowledge of what's being advertised on this article or this podcast. That's the marketing division is separate from us. I think they do a good job of it. I think they're forthright with it. With something like a YouTuber who is not a journalist and doesn't necessarily have to follow any journalistic ethics or anything like that, I would appreciate...
Journalists don't have to follow journalistic ethics stuff.
Right, yeah.
We all know that.
I mean, I would appreciate the posting of a policy. I would appreciate a disclosure, but I'm not going to go so far as to say I don't think a company like The Verge should ever have advertising from a company that they report a story about. I don't even think that's reasonable in today's or any business world at all. But I appreciate that they have their policy clearly stated and they have the disclosure clearly stated. And I like that. I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to do. If it's like, I am a dealer for Perlisten speakers and I'm posting a review, I want you to disclose that. I think that's pretty fair, but I'm not going to say, I don't think you should be allowed to review those Perlisten speakers. I don't think you should be allowed to post your measurements of them. No, that's fine. Go ahead. Just have the disclosure.
So one of the things that I've done in the past, with companies, and you can take this as however you want. This would be good advice for any company that's sending review products in. Like, be sure you're sending the good ones. You know what I mean? So if I am working for a company, and let's say that AV Gadgets, right? So I own AV Gadgets. I'm dealing with that. Some company comes and says, "Hey, when I advertise with you," I'm like, "Great, as part of the advertising package, we'll have this many ads, and with this banners, you provide us with the banners, and we will put them up. Maybe you do like the whole thing where like the whole site, the outside of the site looks like an ad for your company or whatever, and we'll do." We'll do a review a month for the next 3 months or whatever it is, right? And the disclaimer to them would be, listen, send products, be sure that the products that you're sending, you're ready to stand behind, because the editorial and the review people are different than than me, the marketing person. And if I review your products, that person is also different than me, because I'm going to write the review as if I, objectively, and give my objective opinion of it. And if the review comes out poorly, let's make sure that you know that what you're getting, because these people should not be surprised by any criticisms that's levied at any of their products. They should never be surprised. The only ones that are very small companies who think that their product walks on water and they don't have a marketing department and they don't have, a lot of people working for them. They should know, hey, any product. I was mentioning at the beginning of this podcast that I was watching a video that was making fun of Tenet, the movie Tenet, and how it was like, this doesn't make any sense, and these, you can't hear the characters talk and all this other stuff. At the end of the video, I was like, I want to watch that movie again. It was nothing but a diss of Tenet. But by the end of it, I was like, you know what? I'd like to see that again. I like to re-experience how bad that movie is, sort of thing. So they say there's no bad press. There really is, because there's somebody who's going to read a review that has negatives in it, and you're going to be like, oh my God, nobody's going to ever buy our product, and they're going to go, I bet that's not true, or I bet that won't affect me. I won't hear that. And they will still buy your product. So, it is more important to get an objective, thoughtful and honest review than it is to get a glowing one. And you can get glowing reviews. They exist out there. Oh, yeah. And there absolutely
certainly
is organizations that will do that for you.
The paid for content, the stuff that is pure marketing fluff masquerading as a review. And you need to be discerning as a viewer, as a reader, and I don't like that. And if they're not doing any sort of disclosure, if they're not saying, hey, this is paid for content, if they're not saying, hey, this device was sent to me for free and I'm reviewing it, and the company that sent it to me did have oversight. They got to edit what I'm saying in this review before I post it. Like, if there's no disclosure of any of that stuff, I don't particularly trust that reviewer. But I don't hold it completely against them and say that they shouldn't be allowed to do reviews of products that they sell. Just do the disclosure.
Yeah. We'll do one more. So what is the point of having some sort of room correction built right into an individual subwoofer? For example, Paradigm subs often have Anthem Arc built in, and SVS has promised they are adding auto room EQ via the SVS app to their newest 17 Ultra and 5000 series models. Is that purely for the 2-channel crowd? Does it have any benefit for home theater? So, I mean, how many times we've talked about receivers and just having more stickers on the front of them? There is certainly something to be said for, I'm looking at two subwoofers that have the exact same or similar enough price that they're the same to me, similar enough specs that I can't discern between them, but this one has room correction built in. I might as well go for that one. I might never use it, but I might as well go for it because it's got it built in there. If you are SVS or Paradigm or whomever, doing anything to set yourself apart from the competition is important for that exact reason. Now, is it useful?
I can think of scenarios for sure.
There's definitely times when I would suggest people use it. I mean, just recently we had somebody who wanted to boost up that bass you can feel part of without having to buy the app or buy this or
having a automated room correction built into the sub wouldn't necessarily help you with that unless you can manually alter the target curve. Just having a manual PEQ is maybe the most useful thing.
There's also plenty of people out there who are like, I want self-powered speakers, and I would like to have a subwoofer built in, subwoofer that can attach to it. They're not using it. They're not using an AV receiver or any kind of room correction. This gives them something. It's better than nothing. So, 2-channel crowd certainly would fall into this camp. People who are looking for better options than sound bars would fall into this camp. There's lots of let's call it niche uses for something like this, because I would call them niche. I think most of the time it's just a way to differentiate yourself from the competition.
But the one to me, because I think this is actually a fairly substantially growing market, and this can be genuinely useful, is we're getting quite a few self-powered speakers. They're really becoming very popular, a self-powered pair of speakers, many of them with HDMI inputs now. It is basically taking the place of a soundbar system, but also like streaming, right? You want to set up a streaming whole house audio type system, but you're doing it with standalone self-powered bookshelf speakers. They have a subwoofer output. You're connecting a standard powered subwoofer to them. None of those systems so far, or, some of them have EQ systems, or it's done through your smartphone or something like that. But it's like, if you can have a really quite good system like Anthem Arc, and that's built into the sub, and yes, having EQ is most useful in the bass, right? If I'm gonna not EQ something, I'm like, okay, you don't have to EQ the mid-range and the treble. I'm gonna hope that the speaker is neutral enough on its own, and then I'm gonna treat the room myself, or at least have some, break up some of the hard reflective surfaces. I don't necessarily need to EQ the mid-range and the treble, but EQing that bass can be very, very useful. And if I'm doing it in a self-powered speaker setup, or a streaming audio, or a whole house audio, I bought a house and it already has speakers in the ceiling, but I want to add a subwoofer to that room. It's like, I don't have automatic room correction or equalization for any of the subwoofers in the traditional systems. So having that included in the sub itself, I can definitely see use cases for that. Specifically for home theater, right? So first of all, there are some pre-pros that you can buy that have, either a very basic auto setup, or they only have manual PEQ. Again, the most useful place to have that EQ applied is going to be in the bass. So even there, right? If we're doing the type of Denon receiver that we typically recommend around here, then we probably don't need the room correction built into the subwoofer itself at that point. But now we've gone down a number of caveats to where I wouldn't want the EQ built in, or it wouldn't serve a useful purpose to me.
Yeah.
There's all those other scenarios before that point where having it built into the sub could be useful. So I think it's pretty reasonable, honestly.
All right, who do we have? Well, I guess we still have more Sasi questions left.
We still have more Sasi questions. I mean, we don't want to do any more. We could.
No, I have many things to do today.
Perfectly
so
fair.
Well,
in that case, I didn't have any further questions listed on the thing. Although I did have a question or two that came in on Monday this week, so I didn't add those to the list. So I neglected to write those names down, but we do have a couple there, and then more questions from Sasi are still on the list.
All right. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Bill and Steve for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, sending us a PayPal donation, as well as our 126 patrons over at patreon.com.
That is right. Bill and Steve, thank you so much for those PayPal donations. And then patreon.com/AVRant podcast is where you can go to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So a big thank you to our 126 patrons over there.
Thank Jason for telling us about the YouTube music problem. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Jason, for that alert. I would not have noticed otherwise.
Jack, thank you for offering up your Dayton Omni mic for one of our listeners.
Oh, yeah. I just remembered that now. Thanks, Jack. That's a very nice offer.
And Greg for sending in some more codes to test out.
That's right. Thank you, Greg.
We got notes of gratitude from Jack, Leighton, Karl, Ben, Jose, and Sasi. Thank you very much for thanking us.
Yeah, those names one more time were Jack, Leighton, Karl, Ben, Joe, and Sasi. Thanks so much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement, because we really appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you want your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.